This is the our second meeting of the Town Council's Financial Oversight Committee. And as it was posted, and I welcome you. Number one, I want to say thank you very much to Mary and Steve for the comprehensive and very well organized budget package that was prepared for us. It made it very easy to kind of go through it and look through things. So thank you for all that work.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Our first order of business would be the minutes. And before I go any further, Chris, you had, I think, raised your arm as being willing to take the minutes for this meeting.
I'm already doing it.
Okay. And then also, before I go on, I understand I'm supposed to ask if anyone besides LCAT is recording this meeting.
There are no attendees, so nobody's recording.
Hearing none, I'll assume them.
Jim, if I may,
Mhm.
I think you're supposed to give a little statement that we're meeting by Zoom pursuant to the governor's emergency order also.
Okay, can I just say ditto to that, Mary?
You can, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
I second that. We are meeting by Zoom in accordance with the special orders. All right. So I want to thank Tom for preparing the minutes of our February 17th meeting. And he sent them out very timely. I just thought I'd send them out very quickly today in case people had misplaced it or whatever. So I would ask if you have had a chance to review them, if there are any amendments, changes, corrections to the minutes.
I guess I would just jump in now, what I mentioned before, that my email address is not a town email address. It's rjml@charter.net. Because I did not get the minutes last time until today.
Okay, gotcha.
Jim,
Yes, Chris.
I would only suggest that for the attendees, that we, just at one time, we should identify Mary McNally, Town Manager Mary McNally, and Finance Director Steve Lonigan. It's a minimal,
Yeah,
but I think they should be recognized for their titles.
sure. I have no objection to that. Any other comments on the minutes? All right. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes with the two additional comments made by Chris for the titles of Mary and Steve?
So moved.
All right. Any other, do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
I
Oh,
Say
roll call.
aye.
Point
is-
of information, we do have to do roll call because of the governor's order there, because we're on Zoom.
All right, thank you, Kathy. Mike, welcome. All we've done is really go through the minutes, and we're just voting them right now.
Thanks, Jim.
So, Chris,
Yes.
all right, Kathy,
Yes.
Rich,
yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. And Mike, you're here as ex officio, so I don't ask you, correct?
I would say that's a correct statement.
Okay.
And so I just want to apologize. I'm at a remote location here. Had a little bit of trouble logging in, but I'm glad you were able to continue along.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for joining us. Okay, that's that being done. So here's my thoughts as to what I hope we might be able to accomplish today. And obviously we've gotten the package. We've sent Mary and Steve some advanced questions, and they've responded to a number of them. So we can kind of talk about that a little bit. But my main goal would be to get an overall picture of the budget by going through the sources and uses summary. So we can kind of get a sense as to what the budget is currently being proposed or draft, what that impact is on the town. And then after we do that, I'm hopeful that we could look through the department listing, the department uses, the summary that shows the change in the budgets, and perhaps identify those department budgets where we may have a question and think we'd like to talk to the department head, and so that we can then kind of figure out perhaps a schedule going forward as to who we would like to talk to. So that's kind of my goal, so that we have our next meeting set. And finally, kind of make sure we're clear on what we need to provide for May 1st and what we need to provide as of June 1st. So those are my thoughts on what I hope we might be able to accomplish. So first off, before I go to the sources and uses, any general questions, comments about the package that we didn't address or that we'll need to address? Any follow-up questions that we didn't do? Obviously, this isn't the last chance we get to ask for additional information, but if there's anything burning in someone's head about, I need to see this and I haven't seen it yet, please feel free to, bring that up. And Mary, thank you for your budget message. I think it did a nice job of kind of framing things and, where the pressures are and what's helping to kind of alleviate things. And also thank you for the organization charts. And I know you got our message about some of the items, and I'm sure you'll look into those things.
No problem there, Jim. All set.
So, and also thank you for updating the bar chart. It looks, I have to say, and Chris has had many years on the appropriations committee, and I have too, but I think for a draft budget, for a first cut, it's a fairly reasonable looking budget overall. And so it's kind of nice to see when the bar chart was added for FY22 projected, that it doesn't look like there's any huge spike, that we're projecting in order to fund the budget. So just to make sure we kind of follow things along, what I'm looking at is page 1 of 18, which starts as the FY22 sources and uses preliminary. And the way I read this is that our projection of revenues for FY22 is $66,483,618, or $900,266 increase in revenue over FY21's budget, a 1.37% increase. And I take it that we must have finished our debt service on a school building project, and that's why we don't have that reimbursement. But on the other hand, yes, Kathy.
Yes, but I don't want to overstep what Steve can say, but my recollection was that in July or before July of this year, the middle school bond of 20 million will be paid off. And
Yeah.
that's probably why there will be no more reimbursement coming.
Yes, we received the last reimbursement, I believe it was October of 2020.
So I think in this one though, although we lose it for what we call revenue, we also don't have that debt service to pay on the expense side, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Jim?
Chris, you look like you're yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I am. Well, because in the column that says fiscal 21 approved budget, the we're using the maximum levy, not the actual levy.
Yeah,
So
for the budget, yes.
Because that number would be close to $2 million less, because we actually raised, our levy was 44,736,486. So if that is following through on that column for comparison, then that percentage increase is far greater. If we're going to tax to the max.
Right, and it's a good point you raise, Chris, because I guess what I was looking at this as is a comparison of what our max levy capacity would be.
That's what you want to look at.
And perhaps that's how we should describe that FY21 as the calculation of the max levy limit.
Okay.
Would that make more sense?
I don't know. I don't know if you want to deal with an actual number or a potential number.
All right, let's take that under
Sorry.
advisement. Yeah, no. And I'll touch bases with Mary and Steve. It may be that we want to use the approved budget, but in that case, it would need to be the lower figure that was actually approved.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, gotcha. And so, as I understand it, the next grouping, general fund uses budget, general fund uses other. The total uses that we're projecting is 64,505,037, which is about a 1.35% increase, although we'll clarify that subject to Chris's question above about whether we're using the max levy or we're using the budget. But in any event, in terms of what our maximum levy capacity revenue would be of 66,483, we are 1,978,580 lower than that in terms of the expected uses.
Okay.
So I think that's pretty decent. I think it was a little bit less last year in terms of the differential. So this is a little bit, the cushion is actually a little bit higher. And so if I understand the final bullet point or the calculation down on the bottom, in terms of the estimated tax rate, it looks like our actual for FY21 was 2106, and based on the draft budget, the estimated would be 2129, which would be about a 1.1% increase in the tax rate. So that doesn't look too bad. It's not to say we don't have questions on budgets, but overall, at least, it doesn't seem like it's out of control at all. Any other general comments or observations anyone wants to make on that? Go ahead, Chris. I see you kind of looking.
Well, I just want to be able to compute in, not right this minute,
Yeah.
but how an almost $2 million increase on the levy is going to result in only a 23-cent increase. That kind of, that takes me aback, because I was just looking the other day on tax rate impact, you know, that sheet that we had last year that said for every,
100,000 is a nickel.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, Mary.
we were using, 500,000 is 25 cents on
Yeah,
the mill
so
rate.
$1 million is 50 cents.
Right.
So almost 2 million would be about 95 cents, I would think, at least.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm questioning how this is working out.
You know, we need Diane, and she's in Florida.
Yeah.
Well, I need Diane. I don't know, Steve probably doesn't, but my understanding of that 1.9 million was that was the gap. That was what we were not using, not what we weren't going to tax to the max. The
Right.
explanation was that if that 1.9 were used, we'd be at the $25 mill rate, and we're going to try to stay at 21 or close.
Yeah.
And therefore, that 1.9 is almost like excess levy capacity.
Right, but I think I understand what you're saying, Chris. If I understand what you're saying is actual levy for FY21, real estate tax levy is 44,736. And our projected real estate tax levy for FY22 based on the draft budget is 46,031.
Yes,
Yes.
496.
And so if there isn't any
Okay.
increase in the base valuation, yep, go ahead.
Okay, so what is the act, if the 1978 is excess capacity, then it's the difference between the 44,736 and 486 to the 46,031,496. That difference is what is not the $2 million that's on at the bottom, the 1978.
Right.
So, all right. That makes it more understandable.
Let's say that again, Chris. I followed you up. Say that last sentence again, please.
I said that the fact that under fiscal 22,
Right.
the 46,031,496 is the actual, what we're going to raise by taxes. So
That's
the
a
number,
23% increase that we're going to be doing.
right. So the difference is the increase in the levy is only between column 20 for
Right.
fiscal 21. And so that would make it more believable. I was getting thrown off by the 1,978,580, which is actually excess capacity. We could tax to that level, but it would skyrocket the tax rate.
Right.
Thank you, Chris.
So yeah, and that difference between the 46 and the 44.7 is about $1,295,000 or thereabouts.
Okay.
I have to say that I find this sheet a little confusing. Every year I found it confusing.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's why I wanted to spend a little time on it to make sure we understood it.
Yeah.
My age, the print's a little small too, but that was a little bit tough too.
Yes.
Yeah, first time out, Rich, I can understand that.
But we'll also ask Diane to just double check it for us if that's okay.
I would have another question on the new growth because Mary was projecting 350
Yes.
and we had 698 last year. Have you, I take it you probably have spoken to Diane, what she's projecting?
Yes, that number came from her. Steve is the one that had the conversation with her though. But we only budgeted for 500 last year. We actually actualized that 678 or whatever it was.
Yes.
But so for budget purposes, we had 500 in there and now this year it's 350.
Okay.
But Steve, you want to elaborate with that?
Yeah, when we started on the budget process, I talked to Diane and she said the assessors were comfortable with A, 1% growth in value at this time, and B, that the new growth would be 350,000. So that's where those numbers came from.
Okay. It's always nice when it comes out higher.
It would be a little bit lower and then come up higher.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve.
It's kind of like that buy low, sell high theory.
Yeah.
That's all I had on that sheet. Anyone else have any questions on that sheet? I thought we'd move, not necessarily try to go over what we could, if you wanted to, go over the categories of local receipts. That is the next page on the exhibit. So maybe we should just keep in line as we're going. So the next page is page 2 of 18 is the sources and uses. It's the local receipts broken down by category.
Jim? If I may.
Yes, sir.
I do have a question on the second page, and It's just, I'm looking for some information. I know that our receipts are down, and we all understand the pandemic. What I don't understand is why the motor vehicle excise is down.
Do you mean down or flat?
Well, it's showing flat, but
Because it looks flat to
showing
me,
flat, but
2,000,000
it's down a little bit, but I don't understand why it would be down at all, because people still have to pay taxes.
So the FY20 was 2,346,500, and the budget for FY21 increased it slightly to that 2,430,000. So I don't see a decrease, but it looks like the assumption is that it'll pretty much stay at that level for FY22. Is that the
That's the
thinking,
thinking,
Stephen?
because as
Mary?
with motor vehicle in the state, it decreases over till it's 5 years past the year of the car, and then it remains constant. So anybody that bought a new car pre-pandemic would be paying frankly, a substantially lower amount this year than they did in the original year. And because of that, and we don't necessarily, we're kind of basically estimating whether or not that people went out and bought new cars. Some did, but I don't know if it was enough to make it up. It's a conservative approach to it.
Okay. No, I thank you, Steve. I guess part of my confusion is, as Rich pointed out, the print's pretty small, but the budget years are out of order, at least on my sheet. I show FY21, then 22, and then FY20. And
Yeah.
it's small.
See how
We will be in the process, I'm sure, of remodeling this. This is, for lack of better term, the inherited.
this is
We weren't sure we had the right to modify the columns.
This is not Mary and Steve's form. I think this was developed actually the first year that the committee was formed, and I don't know if Sarah and Denise at the time put this together. I don't really recall, but
Honestly, I think it's a case that they wanted to see, this is comparing it to the prior year budget, and the
Yes.
actual is more informational.
yes, yeah, the information is, I think, appropriate. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did see the other department revenue went from 90 to 75, although FY20 was only 58. So there was no comment. I just wasn't even sure what that is.
Honestly, the big items on it are site plans, business certificates, sale of scrap metal, and the early voting reimbursement. And we expect 21, at least with less early voting, there'd be less reimbursement from the state. And there hasn't been a lot of sale of scrap metal.
Other questions on the local receipts projections? If not,
Yeah, Jim, if I can.
go ahead, Tom.
I
Yeah.
guess I'd like in the column to the far right, where it gives you an explanation, to have some information there, because whenever I see a change, whether it's a plus or minus 5%, it always raises a question in my mind. And this is minus 17%. And just above it is a minus 10%. And there's no explanation as to why or what they are. And I don't want to have to go back through hundreds of pages of documentation to try to pick out what those fees are.
Council, for the next meeting, I'll have it updated for you. I'll have something in there for you, and I'll shoot you out a copy of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Other questions on local receipts? If not, we'll move on to the source. Oh, yes,
I have a
Chris.
question. I noticed that there's something in there that refers to MEMA and FEMA reimbursements. Having read this morning's paper about the American Rescue Plan, are we anticipating that money is going to come into East Long Meadow in fiscal 21? I know there's restrictions because it all has to do with COVID relief, and maybe Mary or Steve can better answer that.
We're in line to receive about $1 million, a little over, but again, it has severe restrictions on the application of those funds. It has to be COVID related, so it might be money that we really can't spend.
Ah,
unless we can find a way to pigeonhole it. But I think the schools are getting a separate
yes.
reimbursement or award, if you will. But that's, and I don't know if it'll come in fiscal 21, Chris.
Yeah,
Only got, 90 days left, so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on how fast the state moves. I don't know if the feds are gonna funnel it through the state to the municipalities or how it's quite.
Yeah, well, that's what they did with the CARES funding, but I don't know, this could be different, yeah. The details haven't been revealed yet.
Okay, we're just looking for money, Mary.
Oh, yeah, you and me both.
And through the chair, Jim, if I may, just bag on to what Chris was talking about. In the bottom of the page 2 of 18, it shows that this year our MGM mitigation for funds is 100,000, and I don't remember seeing that how that was utilized in the capital projects that we received. And is there a plan to use that at a later date, or is it going to offset something of current?
Goes into the general fund, Tom. This goes into the general fund, so it can be used for whatever you use the general fund for. In the past, that's where that problem came up, where the council voted to fund 2 specific projects and then had to
Correct.
rescind their votes. It goes into the general fund, all the MGM mitigation money. It's not mitigation money. That particular amount is the surrounding communities fund. It's still MGM originated, but it's not the mitigation. So it doesn't have to be used for a specific purpose.
Okay, so it doesn't fall under the restrictions that we had last year with regards to 2 projects. One was the Pine Knoll and the other was the PD truck.
Yes, those projects, if you recall, were the ones that you voted for to be used and paid by MGM, and you had to rescind your votes because it was inappropriately accounted for. And the money was returned to the general fund. It was still used for those projects, but they were funded out of the general fund, not out of a MGM specific account.
Oh, good.
And the same is true for whatever money we got from them this year, and we'll get, and I think that's going to terminate, maybe, we might be in year 4 or 5 now, and I think it was a 5-year distribution.
Yeah, and Jim, again, another follow-up question. So the money went into the general fund. I know we rescinded that vote and took another vote to appropriate and raise through appropriation through taxation. The money for the Pine Knoll was spent, but the money for the PD truck was not. That was never purchased.
Correct.
So do we need to rescind the vote to fix that? Or does that money just sit in the general fund and used for other
It's in our
projects?
capital projects, it's listed, and there's 40,000 left. And the capital committee this year voted to recommend to use that money towards the purchase of police cruisers rather than buy a pickup truck. It's a fiscal 22 project that if it's recommended and approved by the town council, we probably won't be doing it until next year at this time anyway. So between now and then, we'll figure out if we have to rescind the vote and reallocate, or what the procedure is to apply that money. It's essentially, in my view, going to be viewed as a closed capital project, and the money can be transferred to another similar project since it's general fund money.
Okay. I know you're looking into it, and this sounds like there's a lot of moving parts, but the actual amount was 45,000, not 40?
Yes, and as I told you yesterday, last year when they bought a cruiser, they invaded that account to upfit the cruiser that was purchased last year. So it was 45 and now it's down to 40 and change.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make sure everybody heard that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Why don't we move on to the general fund sources? This is page 3 of 18. And so again, this kind of shows our 1.37% increase. That's again based on the, I guess to your point, Chris, the FY21 is really a maximum levy number, right?
Yeah, because they've used the maximum levy again on taxes under fiscal
Yeah.
21. So that number would
that-
be 44,736,486.
And that's why we have the surplus and the sources less
Yeah.
uses. But I think it's good for comparison purposes.
Yeah.
And
Because
I didn't have,
there's a big
yeah.
difference. I had calculated the difference. The fiscal 22 recommended would be up. If we used the actual levy, that 48 million is actually an increase of 3,273,590. So using the maximum kind of skews our numbers a little
Right.
bit, a little bit more confusing.
Mhm. All right, so maybe we can clarify that prior to our next.
Jim,
prior
if
to-
I could ask, going forward, if not this year or the revision to this budget, I think that the thought was we use the max and then it's up to the council to determine what is an acceptable tax rate. So we're telling you, this is what you can do to the max, so to speak. And then if there's not the appetite for a $25 mill rate, then we would adjust, again, we've never taxed to $25, obviously, and hopefully never will approach that. But that's where the numbers come out based on the property value at the maximum rate, obviously. But I think everyone's contemplation was that we would not be using the max and that this number is excess levy capacity. But I don't know how to make it clearer on this document so that we don't have the same.
I think it may
Confusion
just
all the
be
time.
I think it may just be a matter of showing it somewhere separately. I mean, I personally like this form, and the only reason is in more years than not, the challenge in appropriations and in the town financing was to be able to shoehorn the town's uses and expenses within the maximum levy limit. So this form was originally kind of, I think, designed to see whether we had more to see if we still had a deficit after seeing what the maximum amount we could raise was.
Yeah.
So it becomes less of an issue when we're always showing, having, a big difference between what we could raise and what we have to spend. So the design now is a little bit less appropriate than it was in the past, where sometimes that number would be a negative at the sources less uses, and the challenge was then to get it to at least 0.
Right.
So we can talk about the format, but any questions on the, well, this is probably a good place to look at the general fund budget by groupings, since it shows the percentage increase between the FY21 budget and the general categories. So, clearly, we have general government at 2.58, public safety at 2.07. So the public safety is a combination of the police and the fire, Mary, and the
Yes.
fires
And
transfer of salaries from the general fund to the ambulance fund is kind of what's keeping that overall public safety increase at a 2.07, even though they have the budgets in there for the 2 new positions.
correct, that ambulance fund is a lifesaver.
In more ways than one, right?
Yeah.
So public health, public works, education at 2.78, 1.89 for culture, human services. Again, human services looks like the difference is between the budget and the actual cost of the department head salary. And then the debt service, huge huge difference of the 1,297,000. So Steve, is that partially the 686 from the MSBA that we don't have, or the debt service that we don't have to pay?
Well, that's incorporated in our retired debt. The large driver of that was that we refunded a bunch of bonds last year, and this is the savings that are coming through. And then we didn't go out and for future bonding. So it in last year, we're in 21, so 20. Future bond, we didn't bond in 20, so that's what brought it down for this year.
Are we? Yep, go ahead, Rich.
So I have a different question. Once you finish your thread, I have a
Oh,
different.
no, go right ahead.
Mary, the general government, the 2.58,
Yes,
does that include the internal auditor and the deputy town manager?
yes.
Thank you.
And obviously, so the debt service change really goes a long way to making the overall general fund budget very, very reasonable.
Yeah, it was a great help.
Yeah, although I assume it's just a 1-year help. I mean,
Yeah.
next year, we're gonna have all the expenses above debt service to contend with, but we won't have the minus 1,300,000 to offset it. So it helps this year, but then we're almost gonna have a bigger, we're gonna probably struggle with a bigger jump next year because we won't have that, minus 1.3 again
Right.
to help us over the hump. Okay, I just want to make sure I understand. how
This
that-
is the savings of it's similar refinancing your home. The first year you recognize it, after that it becomes part of your budget at the lower rate.
So I'm happy with the 0.87, but I don't want to get giddy about it because next year we won't have that to use. All right, capital projects. I didn't realize, Mary, that we voted more than what last year's committee voted. But so we show it at the 1,255,000. Obviously, the Financial Oversight Committee will have a chance to review that. And I see the assumptions for at least beginning or resuming funding of the stabilization OPEB.
Yes, if you recall, we did not make any contribution to either of those accounts last year. And I feel the need to remind us, all of us, that many communities in Western Mass invaded their stabilization and free cash to balance their budgets last year, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. So we're ahead of the curve a little bit there, but I'd like to see if we could start to make additional deposits to those accounts for what, for future planning, obviously.
And then other uses, other charges, obviously it's a 0.37% change. I just never remember what that consists of.
Other charges.
Music log.
They must be itemized somewhere in here.
That's something we can
Yeah, I'll
clarify
find it,
later.
send it. I'll get a list for you, Jim.
Yeah, nothing that you have to look up right now. All right, thank you, Steve. What I'd like to do is move, if no one has any further questions about
One
that.
quick question.
Yes, go ahead, Rich.
Mary, in your budget presentation to the town council, you mentioned the figure 0.009 increase, correct?
Yes, I did.
This is me now, nothing to do with anybody. I'm not seeing that figure anywhere as we've been going along. Does that figure show up somewhere in this document?
Yeah, it's way towards the back.
Okay,
I think it's on page 11 of 18, after the departmental detail.
okay, got it now. Thank you.
It's the sum there. It's in the far right-hand column.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to take a chance of embarrassing myself. Would 0.009 be the equivalent to 0.87%?
I think it's pretty close. I think there's a missing zero in there somewhere in the, because it's less than 1%, so it's either 0.087 or 0.009, or maybe my,
Right, but I guess what I'm saying, I kind of assumed it was just the difference between the way you were quoting it as a percentage or not as a percentage.
yeah, I think that's what Steve explained to me when we put those numbers in there.
I think on this, this worksheet, it's rounding. It's,
Yeah. Yeah.
On our other one was 0.9, which is 0.87 rounded up to 0.9.
Okay,
And then if you do it out to the percentage, it's 0.00.
thank you.
I'd like to, if we could, move to the department, it is page 6 of 18, which is sources and uses by department. And perhaps we could kind of walk through it, and similar to what Chris had us do last year, perhaps indicate which budgets, and if it's too soon to do that, you know, we certainly can postpone it, but this would be my next step, perhaps, is to kind of just walk through each budget and determine which ones we might want to either we have questions on, or and ones we may want to have the department head join Mary and Steve, you know, to discuss it with us. Yes, Steve.
Just so you know, for the other charges, it's consisting of the real estate, the overlay, the state offsets and charges from the cherry sheet. That's what make up that number. I'll send you all a breakdown of what that is. It's later in the
Thank you.
presentation.
All right. Thank you. So this would be page 6 of 18. And it starts with town council. Everybody got that?
Yeah.
So obviously the town council is at 0%. Any questions, issues? Yes, Tom.
Thank you, Jim. Since Mike is in attendance, there's been a discussion to add a line item in the town council for professional services in an amount, which would include something in the area of $10,000. I don't know if Mike has spoken about that or he plans to.
Regarding professional services, I remember obviously having a conversation with Mary about another measure of, I want to say, somebody to support her with a lot of tasks that I find her currently dealing with, that how do I say this? Her time would be better used working on forward thinking and the big picture, rather than, if I want to say, printing documents and putting, doing paperwork that somebody else could help her with. If you look at a lot of the other departments, such as DPW, fire department, and many other departments through the town, they have that support. And I see a big problem with that support missing currently right now, not only with Mary's department, but with the police department as well. So Tom, I'm not sure if that addresses the question you're asking.
Yeah, no, Mike, I'm talking about the town council, not the town manager. In the past, we had a line item in there for professional services, and it was taken out, I think, last year or the year before. I don't recall now. And we basically don't have a budget to do anything if we decide or choose to use outside professional services for any item. And it'd be nice to have a reserve of monies in there.
Hey,
Well,
Tom,
if it was currently there, I would ask, in the past, Kathy, prior to myself, do you remember if we had 10,000 there, and if we did, why was it removed?
I don't believe we ever had the money there, but if you look at the FY20 actual, there's a non-salary of $10,194, and that reflects the amount we had to pay to the search committee when we hired Mary. And we didn't have it allocated then, so it was just line itemed, an invoice to the town council, And then when they balanced the ledgers in late May, early June, they covered that deficit.
I'll let you know when you have to upload that.
Okay.
Okay, well,
I
I'll
think
leave it.
it's for fiscal 22, not sure, but should be.
So it is coming back a little bit, and I do remember that number now, and I basically had correlation either with Community Paradigm or the Collins Center.
Exactly what it was. Community
Yeah.
Paradigm was like 9,500 and you didn't have the money in your budget. And I
Right.
think it might have been paid, as Kathy said, out of year-end adjustments or free cash, one or the other. But I'm pretty sure it was paid out of an excess in a different department that when you do your year-end closures and your interdepartmental transfers.
Well, since the town council has ultimate authority over approval of the budget, I guess I'll leave that to the town council in terms of whether that's an item that needs to be adjusted.
Jim, point of clarification.
Yes, Rich?
Part of my, showing my age here, are you like they do in town meeting, the old days? They would read through all the accounts and anybody would say question. Is that what you're doing now? Or we
Yes,
discuss each other?
yes, that would be my goal, Rich.
I'm sure I'm the only one that remembers those old town meetings. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Most of us.
Right, Kathy?
Objection, question, no, it was question, yes.
Good question.
All right, so other than that, let's leave that one alone and we'll leave the town council members to determine how best they want to approach that, but we'll leave the proposed budget at the moment where it is, and I'll assume we don't need to talk anymore about it. The town manager's budget, as we know, has the new assistant, and then the discussion about having somebody as a temporary trial to try to write grants and act as a little bit of a buffer for Mary. So I assume we'll want to discuss that one. Is that correct?
Well, I think any new position we should.
Yeah.
Just out of protocol.
And let me, Jim, if you don't mind, I didn't submit a whole lot of documentation and self-defense. It's because I didn't have time to. So if you put me or my review to the end or close to the end, that'll give me time to prepare my thoughts in writing for you so that I can support the request in a fashion that it should be supported.
The reserve fund transfer, any questions about that?
What is that? Just, what is it?
So it's basically, it's there to cushion any budgetary issues that come up where we have an unexpected expense. And one way to, it's usually used to be called extraordinary and unexpected expenses, where something comes up, you weren't planning on it, you weren't expecting it. Worst case, you were able to pay for it by making a transfer from the reserve fund. So it wouldn't affect your operating budget as long as you still had money in the reserve fund, and you wouldn't have to take it from free cash or stabilization fund. So it's kind of like the first line of defense. I think in a couple of instances, we used it for like boiler issues and things like that that came up in the school where you just had to repair it. There was no choice in the matter, but we hadn't budgeted for it. So that's kind of the purpose of the reserve fund.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I know it's something when I used to do my budgets for work, I used to try to make sure I always had the equivalent of a reserve fund somewhere. Okay, we'll assume that we'll leave that. Town accountant, there again is the request for the internal auditor. So I assume we're going to want to approach that. So to assessor, so we just have the step increases, but we do have a 15% increase in the non-salary items, so that the overall comes out at 4.1. So should we assume we'll review that?
I would assume that,
To
Jim.
ask the question.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And then collector treasurer is a 2.7% increase. We've got the 5.6% increase in non-salary, where the note says due to increased usage of lockbox.
You also mentioned the postage has gone up and the bank
Yeah.
charges have gone up for that
Mhm.
increase.
So is this one that we need to review, or one that we,
Jim,
yep,
you know, she has put travel in there, but I'm assuming it probably means seminar or continuing education type of things.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to know if that's the case.
so would it make sense that there be two levels of review? One is we need as a committee to look at that budget and review it ourselves. And B, we need to have the department head come in and talk to us. And I'm not sure this one rises to the level of having to have them come in and talk to us, but we want to make sure that we go through that budget. And unless those questions can't be answered, then we would do that. Does that make sense? Yes, Steve?
Just so you know, for the travel, Chris, that's what it is. It's to go to the seminars for the Collector Treasurer Association. That's
Good.
all within state.
Okay. Okay.
So
I
let's
assume that's what it might be.
let's assume for the collector treasurer that we'll want to look at the budget, but we won't plan at the moment for trying to have the treasurer come in and talk to us. Is that okay
Agreed.
with everyone? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. with me?
Yep. Legal services, it's leveled flat as at 140. 2020 actual is 221.
How much so far?
Yeah, let's see.
I think this year, we're doing pretty well.
Do you have an idea of, through the chair,
Yes, go ahead.
where are we at with that budget currently? Is it going to need reinforcement at the end of the fiscal year, or are we doing okay? The current.
I think we're going to be fine. I think Olga told me 2 or 3 weeks ago that we were at 86,000 through the end of February. We've been
Great.
saved by virtue of the fact that Michael Pill is representing the town pro bono on the Pease Road Solar. If we had to pay council for that, we'd be in the red again on that, to be
Yeah.
sure. But I think we'll be okay in that line item for this fiscal year.
Okay. with
So
me.
we'll leave it as is. Human resources is, here again, I think the budget for the director and what the hiring amount was for the director was in the town's favor. And so overall, it wound up at minus 5.5. Is this something in members want to review or discuss?
Yeah.
Is there a possibility
Chair.
of change in there? Excuse me.
Go
Is
ahead,
there
Chris.
possibly a
And,
change because of step increases? Because that would cover 3 people, the director, the benefits administrator, and the support person, the generalist.
I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't hear the first part of the question.
I said, I'm assuming that this is a pretty solid salary number because it covers 3 people, or is
Correct.
there a possibility of step increases or anything like that?
No, they're all non-union, so they're contractual employees and they're not getting steps, and they've been compensated through fiscal 21 with some small increases, but that's a solid number for 22.
Great, thank you.
Tom, you had a question? Yeah.
Yeah, I did, Jim. On the second item, the non-salary. That spike of 40%. I question why. What caused that to increase it?
Okay, so what we can do is we'll consider this one. We'll look at the budget, but not plan to call a department head in unless we can't answer it. So let's do that for the human resources. All right.
So Jim, as we turn the page,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to invite the town manager in, obviously, the town accountant,
Yep.
and the assessors department so far, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Although with the assessor, that might, again, I don't think I kind of made the differentiation between reviewing the budget and having the department head come in.
okay,
That one, because the basic question is really in the non-salary expenses. Perhaps we treat that as, let's review the budget. If we can't
okay,
answer it, we'll ask Diane to come in.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. So the next, we're on to the next page. It's information technology. And here the total is 5.7%. My guess is, given the size of the budget and the increase, we'll probably want to walk through this and have Ryan talk to us about it a little bit. Does that, people agree with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Town council and clerk is a 1.7% decrease. Thanks to not having as many elections, perhaps.
Yes, thank you, yes.
I don't see, I wouldn't see a need to really review this one very closely unless anyone disagrees.
I just have a personnel question. Melissa G, she works in both departments, Mary?
Yes, she does.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
And I misspoke because elections is the next item.
Right.
And that is minus 55%. So I assume we wouldn't need to look at that.
No problem.
Well, Jim, if I may,
Yes, Tom.
so that brings us back to the non-salary for the town and clerk of the council there, minus 27.9%. We don't have an explanation, and I guess I'd like to know what that is then, if it's not election related.
Yeah, it might be in the body of the of their budget, which this isn't really aimed to do. But what we can do is we'll look at it, Tom, as a, let's assume we won't call the clerk in the clerk in unless we can't answer it. But we'll make it a point that we'll look at the budget and the detail that goes along with it. Okay, good point.
That's good.
I think, Jim, Jeannie indicated that the charter review was responsible for a lot of that extra expense this year in the clerk's budget, for what that's worth to you.
So the planning, zoning, and conservation overall is a minus 10.9%. Again, Mary's hire as the director was at a lower level than what was the budget for our previous director. And I don't see a big reason to review this very closely at this point. Any
That's
objections?
okay.
Okay. The PVPC assessment, we don't have much. It's not a huge amount, and we don't have much to do about it. And it actually went down from our budget of 2021. So I assume no one needs to talk about that. All right. So we move on to police. Yep. Clearly, we're going to talk a little bit about that, I assume.
So Jim, as we turn the page, we're adding Ryan Quimby and Mark Williams to our invite list.
Yes. Yep. And then fire, as Mary pointed out, this ambulance service, I mean, not only are we providing the service to our residents, but generating the revenue to do so. It's actually seems to be working out quite well.
Kudos.
And So this, the impact on the budget for this year. The only issue here is this is requesting that deputy chief type position. So again, I think probably we should just make sure we understand the need for it.
Right.
And so percentage wise, it wouldn't normally be something we would need to really go through too well. But I think perhaps just out of our fiduciary purpose of understanding the need for the positions, we probably should walk through it with the chief and Mary. Any objections to that?
Keeps us
No.
consistent.
Jim,
All
may I
right.
make a
Jim?
comment? I
Yes.
have to thank Mary because she negotiated with both the public safety chiefs, and both of those positions would be starting in January. So it's just a 6-month impact for each of those positions on this budget. And I think that's a real good strategy, Mary. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Chris.
Good point, Chris. Tom?
Yeah, if I can go back to fire, the non-salary line item.
Yep.
This doesn't include ambulance, or it does include ambulance?
My guess would be that if it's being taken out of the general fund, that it would not include ambulance.
That brings me to my question that I think it's worth looking at. I mean, it's almost a 12% increase. And if I don't understand the reason for it, it says replacement of equipment, but there are other areas where we're replacing equipment in capital. So I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'd like a question.
The chief does talk about it a little bit more detail than this in his budget, that's in the body of our package, but that's definitely something that we can make sure and clarify with him when we meet with him.
Yeah.
Yep. So building department is our next grouping. 1.9% increase. I assume that's just contractual or increases.
He does have some step increases there, yes.
And so overall, it's a 1.8%.
Why are there temporary positions in that department?
For a while, he had trouble finding inspectors to put on the
Okay,
payroll. and
that's
so he
what it was.
using
Thank you.
people. I think that's what those guys. lines
Exactly. I
represent.
apologize. I did
No
read that.
problem.
I still remembered.
All right. And this is somewhat offset by inspection fees, correct?
Oh, absolutely. It's another money-making department overall,
All right.
generally speaking.
So the assumption is they actually generate more than we spend?
I know in fiscal 2020 they did, probably close this year, but the impact of COVID has been kind of up in some departments, down in others. I think he's starting to get busy again. They just gave me their report for the last month and it's about 18 pages. So
I wouldn't see the need to really go wild reviewing this one. Anyone else?
I
Okay.
agree.
Agree.
Dispatch, that appears pretty straightforward. It's a bill from what is it,
Westcon?
So there's not a lot for us to say about that, right? Other than it is substantially less than we were looking at with a 24-hour department for East Long Meadow alone. So
Sure.
yeah, and we're keeping that only because eventually we will have a line item for it that will necessitate spending some money. But right now, the Commonwealth is offsetting what our obligation is. This is the second year of fund. So that's what that's in there for.
okay. The health. Oh, so so this might be offset by grants, correct, Mary?
Absolutely, yeah.
Then the next item is health department, a 1.2% increase budgeted. Any issues, anything that people think they need to review on that one? Okay.
When they have the initials ACO, that refers to the ambulance account?
No, that's the animal control officer.
Thank you. Sorry, jeez, I have all my notes. I can't read my notes.
It's okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
For shame, Rich, for shame.
Gee.
I used to make write-ups or comments on loan presentations, and the lender would come back to me and say, "So what did you say here?" And I wouldn't even be able to make it out. So don't feel
Just so
bad.
you know, Rich, we'll be happy to transport animals by ambulance too, if they have insurance.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm at Bay State. I'll take him in the emergency room, no problem.
Okay, so the next item is administration and highway. We're into the basically the DPW, and if again the overall public works budget is a 0.3% increase, so obviously very very reasonable. It is one of the largest departments in terms of overall budget. So I don't know if that means we want to have Bruce come in just to cover anything that we might have a question about, even though the overall budget is really pretty reasonable. I don't know how people feel.
Would we have Bruce come in anyway for the capital projects?
He could definitely explain his capital projects, yes, and that probably is the best reason for him to come in. In that, it's a good idea. So let's schedule or assume we'll have Bruce join us, because his capital projects make up quite a probably the majority of items for the town.
So keep us accountable, Jim. We're now adding Paul Morissette and Bruce Finney to our invite list.
That's correct. So that takes us down to education. So we got the one pager. Mary had received a memorandum from Gordon, kind of discussing the positions that were asked for last year but not put into the budget. So we have the memorandum, and then we have the one pager. I thought Greg had mentioned that there was other supporting spreadsheets, but I didn't see anything. So
I haven't seen anything, and Steve hasn't, so.
All right, maybe I'll reach out and ask about that. But clearly, we have a duty to make sure we understand the school budget and the pressures on them. I would say in general, 2.78, it's one of those budgets that is not, it's not crazy, but I think it's necessary for us to understand that. I think last year was like a 1.3% increase. So,
Jim?
Yes, Chris.
Okay. Well, first of all, I believe getting a one-page summary of the largest budget in town, which is over $32 million, is their request. I did some number crunching, and basically the town's portion of the school budget would go up 4%. So their overall percentage may say 2.78, but our portion of that budget is going up 4%. So I really think we need to have some documentation as to why that is. We haven't gotten any answers.
Chris, forgive my ignorance. How did you calculate the town's portion being 4%?
Because I took what they're asking for this year.
Yeah.
And what the state has so far said on Chapter 70 monies.
Yeah.
That leaves us with our portion, which is going to be over $20 million. And I compared it to what we what the town supported last year. I can certainly send you those
Yeah,
numbers.
net of, and last year, net of the chapter 70.
Yes.
Okay, all right, all
And
right.
the
Yep.
other thing that concerns me is I would like to know what they're going to get in what they call ESSER funds. Because the state has given them, I believe, over 255,000 this year, with an additional 10,000 for the mental health support that they're going to have to provide the children. So with this new money coming in, if they have any projection of what they're going to get, the extra federal money for schools, I think it would behoove them to give us that information as well, so we can make a clearer decision on our recommendation.
Good,
Okay.
good points. Thank you. And I'm not sure, with the $1.9 trillion, bill that was passed, how much the schools may be looking forward to receive and for what purposes, but I'd certainly be interested in getting an update on that as to what they may be looking forward to receiving and what it might be used for, and how that might affect their 22 budget.
And let's not lose sight of some of the other monies that they receive, such as they get the reimbursement for the school choice program. Granted, it's not much. It's going to be around $25,000, I think is what they told us last year. But it would help if they would provide us with their revenues anticipation.
Any other discussion on the schools? So we will definitely plan on inviting them, and I'll try to send out an email prior to that asking for some additional information.
Thank you.
And that would be, let's see, number 11. All right, and on the school committee budget, we can ask our questions when they come, but I couldn't square up the comments on the school committee budget to the numbers on the school committee budget, so.
Didn't we give them, excuse me, we gave them a raise last year?
Yeah,
We did.
not to my recollection, Chris.
Yeah, I thought it was flat.
Previous year.
We might have done it in a previous year.
When I was on the school committee, we did get a bump. I don't remember how much it was. Maybe.
Yeah, it was a reduced, the reduced level bump, yes, yeah. Okay,
Okay.
so that's schools. Next item is library. So that's overall a 1% salary increase, in total 1.4%. Any issues, questions to review for library? If none, we'll,
Jim,
yes, yeah.
just a general question, and Mary or Steve can probably answer this stuff. With the library being closed for most of 2020, I know they still had activities going on, but were there any realized savings from that?
They had several furloughs that have been recently returned, not recently, probably within the last 3 or 4 months, but don't forget, just because the door is closed doesn't mean that all of their work isn't being done, because they were doing that curb service, they were doing an online subscription service, they send their emails weekly with all their special programs. So the short answer is no, probably no net savings. I'm biting my tongue here because I'm really dying to ask you as a committee, when you look at these budgets with a 1% increase or 2% or something, please remember how hard these people have worked and the stress they've been under for the last now 15 months. It has not been an easy year to be an employee of a municipality. So don't think for a minute that because the doors were closed that things weren't happening. In fact, it was probably a more difficult year than they've ever had. And they did fantastic work, almost to a person.
Okay,
That's
you.
the long answer to your question. Sorry, Tom.
I did notice that they have 3 open positions. I wonder if that would realize some savings. They did have 3 open positions.
Those might be the people that were laid off completely. They had some furloughs and some
Yeah.
layoffs, but we laid off the pages. So I'd have to look, Rich, with some.
Oh, that's, I'm just, yeah, I don't think we need to go. into-
Yeah,
Okay, so we'll leave that budget. It is a little past a 2:45, and I think what we had discussed in our ground rules that we would try to keep our meetings to 90 minutes. So I don't think we're going to get through all of the department budgets and other funding items for this afternoon. I would say let's try to get through this page 10 of 18 down through human services, and then spend a little bit of time about what we do next and our timetable. So, and we'll assume that we'll pick this up at our next meeting and complete it, so we can then kind of schedule folks as needed. So that being said, our next item is recreation, which is a 4.4% increase in salaries, minus 6.3 in non-salary, we're for a total of 3.7. And Mary, I guess that this is general fund expense that isn't in the categories of the various recreation funds that they
no, and the
manage.
main increase, the explanation for the increase on the salary is their deputy director, Jordy Emmanuel, in my opinion, has been grossly underpaid for his tenure here. It's only been a couple of years, but he was making somewhere in the low 40s, and some of the administrative staff in other departments was making more than he. So Donna advocated for an increase, and he got a raise during fiscal 21 of, so to match that going forward to 22, that's why you see the 4% increase. That's primarily the deputy director position. And mind you, again, this is a department that worked without any administrative staff for all of COVID.
They have an open position still, Mary, am I
We have
correct?
2 open positions. One's being advertised now, and one they would like to upgrade to a program coordinator because they do so much work after hours and on weekends.
Mm,
This coming Saturday, for
True.
example, they're having an Easter egg hunt, and the people who are going to staff it are likely to be the director and the deputy director.
true.
So it's things like that that they do well after evening hours. It's well earned, at least in my opinion. So, but it does not come from revolving funds, Jim. It's the salary general fund.
So my thought would be that we should review this budget. I'm open to suggestion whether we need to bring we feel we need to bring the recreation director in to talk at this point.
I think I'd put it in that 2 level you have, Jim. Well, let's review it first and see if we need to bring Donna in.
Right.
All right,
I would agree with Rich.
very good. Celebrations, cultural, historical, 1.3% increase. It's almost not worth asking, but I was just curious as to what it is that kind of changed it, but in terms of what the assumptions are. But I mean, I wouldn't see a need to review this in a major way.
Jim?
Yes, Chris.
Just a question. I mean, we didn't have the parade last year, but that's not the only thing. But I understand that when we do have the parade, they basically pay the bands and participants a year ahead. So I would just say probably it's just a transportation issue, people coming, different groups, different prices, probably because they lost income last year. I don't think it's overwhelming.
No.
Ryan would know better.
So we'll leave it. I don't think it's.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. The next item is Council on Aging. So that's of a 0.3% increase in salaries, a negative 2.5 in non-salary for her overall of 0.1%.
Looks okay.
I guess we can leave that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Is this Mary, did Mary Beth develop this budget, Mary? Mary Beth?
Mary Beth Dowd is our new director. There's some salary savings as a result of her hire as well.
Thank you.
And then veteran services, it's a 16.6% increase in salary and for a total of a 3.3%. Is that a something that's based on number of veterans in town or something?
The budget for the district is based on land valuations, and East Long Meadow pays 55% of the overall budget, which this year, well, for the last several years, it's been 60,000 and change, but there's some controversy about some mysterious surplus that was used for the last 3 years to pay down that budget by 10,000. So East Long Meadow's contribution the last few years has been 28,000 and change, and this year it bumps up to 33 and change. That's a department that may well be subject to revision between now and May, or certainly June, because there's quite a bit of controversy about the intermunicipal agreement that calls for our 4 communities to participate. It's Hamden, Wales, Munson, and East Long Meadow, and we pay the lion's share, and there's a lot of dissatisfaction with how it's being operated. So
is this something where that group then calculates a bill for each of the towns?
well, they prepare their budget, which I have in front of me. It's $60,308.92. And East Long Meadow's share of that is 55.7%. So, sorry. But we were supposed to meet today. And they postponed the meeting till next Thursday. So I don't know what's happening. I have to look at the IMA and see if East Long Meadow even wants to stay in the district.
So sounds like this is one where there's not a lot to review, but we want to kind of keep updated with the changes. So I'm going to just mark it down as a budget to theoretically review, but really meaning to hear whatever updates there are to it, because otherwise it sounds like there's not a lot that we can do to manipulate that number other than through that group.
Yes, that's true, Jim.
All right. So that takes us through the human services grouping. I would suggest, since it's 2:53 now, that we stop there. We had agreed to try for Thursday afternoons, 1:30. Is everyone okay if we try to schedule a meeting next Thursday for 1:30? I think at this point we would look to review the budgets that we agreed that we would look at, and we'll finish off our going through the listing to see what else we need to look at or have people bring in, have people brought in to talk to us, and if we can, just review the budgets, the budget packages of these departments that we said we'd look at to see whether the questions we have are answered by those. I would say at that point, our next step would be to schedule folks to come in and talk to us. But I would say we do that next Thursday. And then based on what we're looking at, we schedule the rest of our meetings. But at a minimum, is it okay if we anticipate we'll do this weekly on Thursdays at 1:30? And if we have to compress or do something, we can talk about that. So on May 1st, my understanding is that Mary presents to the town council her quote unquote final budget. Is that your understanding as well, Mary?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I don't know that our committee opines on Mary's final budget. it seems to me where we insert ourselves is then opining and making recommendations to the town council in terms of Mary's final budget, that we would, if there's any differences, what we would recommend to the town council in terms of their final vote on the budget by 6/1. Is that everyone's understanding? Okay, so we'll just
Could I
continue.
ask a question on that? Remember last year, my motion to the council was for a 63 million and something, and the Oversight Committee's recommendation was $56,000 less. And so for that council meeting, we prepared two motions, 1 and 1A, and it caused some confusion. So I just didn't know, in terms of scheduling, if I give my final budget on May 1st, will the Oversight Committee report to the council in between then and June 1st, so that at the June 1st meeting, we'll know what to, I guess I don't want to confuse the council or myself any more than I already am. And that happened last year. It was a little bit strange.
So I saw a couple of heads shaking, Kathy and Chris. What were you shaking your heads about?
Well, I think my opinion, perhaps I should let Kathy go
No,
first.
go ahead. I'm probably thinking the same.
My opinion would be is that Mary submits her final. I don't know if she has any negotiations going on now between now and May 1st, but then we review that final budget. And that's when we do our work. Sometimes a lot of last year we were in accord with just about every area of the budget except for 1 or 2 items. So I don't want to cause confusion by saying, no, we'll do it the same way as last year, but I think that's the better way to do it because that's what we're charged with. We're charged with reviewing her final budget.
Kathy?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mary, when you present your quote unquote final budget by May 1st to the town council, when you do that, are you planning to have all the motions and everything available for the town council to vote on at that point?
That's what my question is about. I'm thinking that at the meeting where the council votes on the budget, will the council have the benefit of the finance oversight recommendations in advance, and so that we only prepare the motion that they will have already accepted, as opposed to 2 motions and saying, well, this is the town manager one and this is the oversight one, so pick. I'd like to avoid that if we could.
Yeah, I'm hoping that, where we would be coming out is we would be formulating our recommendations after
Right.
May 1st. But, and maybe, hopefully completing them within a couple of weeks so that we can submit our recommendations to the town council. And so I don't know whether at that point the town council votes on it and then you prepare, whatever the votes are to prepare the motions that go along with it.
It doesn't really
But maybe we should spend a little time. Maybe we could spend a little time walking through that so it is more efficient than it was last year. But I agree with Kathy and Chris that I don't think we should get involved in your presentation of the final budget, but we'll continue working. We'll formulate our recommendations, at which point there may be some changes to what that final budget would be, and we would be recommending to the town council, hopefully within time for the town council to make their determinations and make their vote.
I must not have been clear in my concern. I know I have to do my final with, and I don't expect you'll be ready to evaluate that until after the fact. But I was thinking between May 1st and June 1st, when I'm done, well, then you have an opportunity to go before the council sometime in those 4 weeks, so that at the ultimate council meeting where they vote on the budget, the motions that are prepared for that meeting will be correct as opposed to, that's all. I mean, I can do both. We can do both.
So
Jim, I have
It's up
to,
to the
Uh,
council
hey,
and they
hey,
can
I
decide.
have to go.
Oh, okay,
Corinne
all right.
Geese is waiting for me on looking over the new dental plans for the town. And I'm on a Zoom meeting. I'm one of the few people that could make it, so I gotta go. See everybody
Well,
next week.
Hi, Rich.
Thank you, Rich. Mike, you were going to say something then, Kathy?
I'm gonna, I have a closing statement, so I think we should have Kathy speak prior because
All
it's
right.
on this subject matter.
It's an FYI that after Mary gives us her final budget on May 1st, we also have to find a date for a public hearing.
Yes.
Mhm.
So if we look back historically, the last 2 years, it's not unrealistic to think that our committee will have to definitely meet every week, and the council may need to meet as well more than twice.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And
Uh,
Question?
Since
Sorry,
Mike
Jim.
said he's got a closing statement, I'll go along with Tom and then Chris.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. My understanding of what we've done in the past, and I'm trying to recall, but we also took, when Mary presented her budget to the town council on May 1st, or close to it, there was recommendations or changes directed to us by the town council as the things that they would like to see addressed. And we addressed those as well in our review. So that needs to take place. So basically the town council will have an opportunity to ask questions on Mary's submitted budget, and those will be reflected in our meetings.
Good point. Who else was it? Was Chris? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, 2 points. Generally, we do our report and prepare it so that it's given to the town council prior to the hearing or our meeting with them explaining our reasoning on the budget. And secondly, does anybody know the date of the school budget hearing?
That's a good question.
I think I said I would be sending something to Greg about the budget, so I can include that in the email.
Mike?
Think we're back to you, Mike.
The first part of my question, Kathy answered. We're on the exact same page. The second piece would be, we're talking about bringing in other department heads for clarification. I would only ask that if there's documentation required prior to them coming in, I think we'd all like to have that documentation prior to them sitting here so we have a chance to analyze and possibly either answer questions or create new ones.
So that's a good point, and that's something that perhaps we all can do between now and next Thursday. Kind of look at those budgets that we did question and if they're, particularly for the people that we're going to bring in, if there are specific pieces of information that we want in addition to what they've already supplied, we can kind of prepare that list and discuss it on next Thursday.
Jim, I have a 4-page letter, a vision statement by the chief of police. It was addressed to me. I shared it with the council. It does address the position, among other things. I didn't forward it. I didn't include it with the budget package because I didn't think it was appropriate to do that, but I'm happy to share it with you. And Paul Morissette attached a job description and some narrative information about his requests, which I can forward. But again, that was addressed to me in support of his budget conversations with Steve and me. And again, that's why. And that's also why the school committee email, that page that I sent you today, wasn't, because I didn't think it was part of the budget package per se. But Steve also has a bit of a bullet pointed sort of narrative about the need for the internal auditor. So I can forward all that stuff to you right away, and you can at least have the benefit of reading it before you speak to those department heads about, their particular wants.
I think that would be helpful, Mary. I know in the past, some departments do like a 1 or 2 page narrative, explaining their budget. And I've always found that to be helpful, to kind of couch the numbers within.
Okay,
Any other questions, items we need to cover today? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second, any other discussion? All right, hearing none. Is this a roll call because it's a Zoom? All right, then I will ask Chris,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and Rich is no longer here. I vote yes. A motion to adjourn is approved at 3:06. And thank you all for all of your input and your help. Look forward to seeing you next Thursday.
Yep. Thank you all.
here,
Happy
everyone.
Easter.
Thank you.
All right, happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Yes.
Happy Easter.